want you to just imagine for a minute, if you could design your very own city, what would it look like? What would it feel like? Who would it be for? Maybe this is something you've thought about a lot. I know I have. I love cities. I love the dynamism of cities. I love the energy and the ambition of cities and how we build them and how they grow. I love the history of cities. I like the hidden places, the quiet corners. I like sidewalk stamps. You can follow me, this is a real thing. I really like to think about how cities work and how they became and how we can make them better. And the idea of building your perfect city, usually it's a fantasy. Usually it's something that we talk about, we try to imagine, but we never have the opportunity to realize, unless you have something like this. This is YZD. The former Downsview Airport lands in the middle of the Greater Toronto area. Almost 400 acres of land, 1.5 million square feet of airplane hangars waiting for reimagining, centered on a 2-kilometer-long runway. And for reference, 2 kilometers, if you're from Toronto here, we're talking about Yonge Street from Bloor all the way down past Front. You can see Downsview Park subway station, one of 3 TTC subway stations around this site. You can hop on the GO line between Union Station and Barrie, between Vaughan and City of Toronto. What would you do if you had a project like this? The opportunity to build homes for over 60,000 people and 20,000 jobs. And this is a real challenge. It's a question. If you have a property like this, what do you do with it? You could build anything. But you can't build everything. So how do you choose? So I'm here to help. And bear with me, I only have 15 minutes. I mean, obviously this is a joke. 1 million rules for building the perfect city. Sometimes it does feel that way, though. When we look at this blank canvas, we think anything is possible, but the reality is that in a lot of ways, before you even put pen to paper, a lot of things are already determined for you. There's countless regulations and design guidelines and standards and policies. There's social norms and cultural expectations about what these places need to be. There are business practices that we face, lending criteria, and all these things that determine what's going to get built before you even begin. And so the idea of building a perfect city is really complicated. And this isn't going to be a talk about deregulation and why the free market needs to be more effective, because I think the governance of how we build cities is really important. But it is going to be a talk about how there actually are 1 million rules for building a perfect city, because there's 1 million different kinds of perfect city, and context is what really matters, and how we apply the rules based on what we're trying to develop. And I've experienced this myself in my role at YZD at Northcrest. I lead the responsible development portfolio, which is really figuring out how to help the development team achieve the best possible outcomes in terms of the environment, culture, and social impact. And it is really complicated. You know, naively, I think when we started, we said, you know, let's go through all of the different requirements and criteria and the community feedback, thousands of pages of policy documents and guidelines, and identify all the really important indicators of impact, social environmental impact. And we'll map those out and we'll start to set targets for the projects, whether it's a building or a park or a road. And we're going to drive impact by setting guidelines and rules. And you realize really quickly, it's super complicated, and mapping that out looks something like this, an interwoven map where the actions that you take have multiple outcomes. And you realize when you get in the details that while we know how to do a lot of this stuff, there's many things that we don't know how to do. We don't know how to measure. We don't know if we can do them or how to do them. So what's really important in these contexts is ultimately what's the vision that you're trying to create? And do you have that lens through which every decision you can compare and look against that and decide, are we moving in the right direction? Are we achieving some outcomes? And we look for strategies that are win-wins, things that deliver multiple positive benefits. But there's moments where we also have to really evaluate trade-offs, and I think that's an overlooked thing, where sometimes you're trying to do something good at the expense of something else that's equally good. And having really strong values and debate and discussion about the place you want to be and how do you choose between those things is critically important. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about what our values are for this project, but they're the right values for us. But ultimately, what I do want to talk about is this idea of trade-offs and choice. In cities, we always think of the growth and the possibility, but we are facing real tangible constraints. Physical constraints, financial constraints, and obviously dealing with things like the laws of nature and human behavior. And choosing is really important. And in no place is that perhaps more evident than our streets. And the idea that we can accommodate everything equally is quickly proven to be a bit of an illusion. The idea that just by giving everything its own space, we can optimize around the system and inclusion. But the very act of giving space to things starts to shape our choices and our prioritization. If we don't prioritize, the space does it for us. And we can see how edited space, restricted, even when it's unplanned, shapes behavior and makes choices for us in the way we use space. And these are really different outcomes. And if you don't understand the context and the choice, it's really hard to choose what do you leave in and what do you edit out. And oftentimes what you edit is as important as what you add. Our main streets are critically important places, and we try to do a lot of things in them, sometimes too many. We know housing is a critical issue, and we want to add a lot of housing, and there's a lot of really strong reasons why we want to put housing on our main streets and our avenues. But if we don't understand the context of our avenues and the role that they play in supporting local communities, we do things that may lead to unintended consequences. Our traditional avenues of 2- and 3-story small-scale retail are great places to put a lot of people because they are the backbone to walkable communities, complete communities with lots of amenities. But then we service them with loading and garbage collection areas like this, which work really, really well for efficient and safe collection of garbage. But they come at the cost of 3 or 4 storefronts and 5 or 6 housing units. And that's a choice that we're making that ends up adding people to the very neighborhoods where we want them to be while we're taking away the amenities and resources that make these really great places to be. And the alternatives exist. They're not always easy. And they become choices about whether we want to allocate space or technology or processes to space. And those are really our 3 choices. And unfortunately, in North America, I think we often choose space because we don't really value space properly. We don't have to sign a check for it the way we do necessarily if we're buying equipment or hiring someone to do a job. But it's real, and the impacts of space on how people experience cities is undeniable. You know, our main streets are places where people live, where they experience the dynamism of cities, and we make strange choices in our developments. You may notice the emergence of dentists in every main street, retail under every building, and there's real pragmatic reasons why we do these sorts of things. You know, having amenities like this within the neighborhood are really important for making them livable. But in terms of the public space as a place that we want to be and spend time in, you know, sometimes we want to think about different outcomes. If we take a moment and pause and think about the experiences we have and our expectations of spaces and the way we experience them, we can still build places with these really fine-grained, dynamic environments that have the same characteristics of the old places we love, even when they're new. And a lot of that is anchored in the idea of human-scale design and building fine-grained things that we're starting to lose in the standardization and normalization of spaces. Everything migrating towards the mean. And human scale is really important, but I also don't want to lose the opportunity for awe and wonder. In My Perfect City, we have both the small and the big. And it is, in fact, the dichotomy of the human scale with the monumental that makes it monumental. In My Perfect City, we worry a little bit less about height, and we worry more about how height meets the ground and connects to people in intimate ways. That transparency is not permeability. In My Perfect City, the city is actually going to tell you if our rules and requirements work. It's going to give you messages, and hopefully we listen. In My Perfect City, there are layers upon layers, and there's change and transformation. There's the opportunity for people to put their mark on the city and make it their own, and for unexpected things to become landmarks. In My Perfect City, it's not all about utility and function and optimization. It's about play and experience. The people will make these places their own. In My Perfect City, we'll actually embrace the constraints that we have. And it's interesting to look at places that were built with real constraints, physical, geographic constraints, limited material palettes, real engineering limits on height of buildings. They built really unique places given the constraints, and I think we need to lean into those. In My Perfect City, we worry less about private space and more about public space. And not so much about how many different things can we do in every public space, how much programming. Do we have the playground and the sports fields? But what diversity of public space can we create that's accessible to everybody within the community? In My Perfect City, we have opportunities to immerse ourselves in nature. We have opportunities for public living rooms. In My Perfect City, it's not just one city. It's a million cities and a million different experiences layered on top of each other, which provide a richness that you just can't get through rules alone. It's about embracing context and allowing for growth and change over time. It's about having a vision and constantly thinking about how do you work toward that vision. Now we're in the early days at YZD, but you can start to see what we're up to, and by all means, come up and visit. You can come to our plaza, where we've created a new public living room for the community, where we brought art and culture to the forefront, where we're embracing the history of the site, where we're connecting people back to nature in a place that was built for industry. And we hope that in the future, this is a place that will move the center of the city outside of the current downtown hub into a new place that is a city within a city, that embraces city nature, that embraces inclusive prosperity, that embraces sustainable urban mobility and climate readiness, and ultimately, the quality of life of the people who are going to live here. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much.